Kari Poppleton, you're my first Winnipeg guest. You are helping CEOs and CMOs get the numbers they need to know in one easy to understand dashboard. I'm going to have you prove that. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
So, are you a geek? Can I call you a geek? Is that fair to say?
I think I finally reached the point in my life where I'm very comfortable owning that label and kind of going back to my numbers loving roots and trying to help other people with that.
Yeah, it's, I tell you, it's so many of us hide from the numbers, right? Especially entrepreneurs, especially salespeople, right? The creative types. Have you found that? And then kind of holding a mirror in front of them saying, why are your numbers so bad? Do you have like a tissue, like therapy? Like, I don't know why my numbers are so bad.
There is definitely a lot of support that goes through in helping people find these numbers and look at the numbers and be okay with looking at what they are and saying, hey, this is where we have an opportunity to change. And I think a lot of people are just really uncomfortable with numbers in general. Like some people are like, oh, I had this really awful math teacher in grade 3 that made me hate math. And they told me I was terrible with numbers. And that really carries on with people and they kind of own that label. Some people don't love finances or they've had bad financial experiences. So then that kind of puts them off of it. So there's all sorts of different kind of circumstances and situations that people bring into them as they look at their business numbers that kind of tends to freak them out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, where is your focus? Are you working with like small to medium businesses? Do you work with executives, to individual salespeople, all the above?
Yeah, a lot of them are kind of CEOs or the people who are running their marketing teams who really are lacking those numbers. You know, they kind of get into discussions where they're like, what's the next best step? They're like, I don't know, but it would be really great if we knew these 3 numbers, and they can't find them easily. So that's usually where they bring me in to be able to find them for them so that they can easily have them there so that they can reference them and actually use them to make decisions.
So what numbers are they looking for that they don't have? I mean, I gotta imagine they have them. They just don't know where to look for them, or like what's going on?
Yeah, I think a lot of the complication, especially in digital businesses, is that there's so many different tools that people use that often the information is very siloed and they have a really hard time taking all of that and pulling it into one place where it kind of all makes sense together. So they can see, you know, one number in isolation over here and one over here, but then like, but what does that mean when you kind of pull them together? So different things that we look at are like traffic, like literally where is your website traffic coming from? Which platforms are sending most of it? You know, is it your Facebook ads? Is it coming from Instagram? Is it coming from Google? Wherever, you know, people are using to kind of drive most of their marketing efforts. Some of the things are when it comes to actually like their sales and how people are actually converting through their sales process. So either completely online or for people that do, you know, sales calls and they're literally have, you know, a sales process that they're working through. A lot of times those aren't tracked in a lot of businesses. You know, they have calls they go to, but they're not really keeping track. They talk about how many clients they land, but not all the pieces before that help us to really figure out where the bottleneck is in that process.
Yeah. I'm friends with a guy who's built some successful tool, Heroes, I think it's called HYROS, something like that. Hyros, right? Alex Becker, and I don't use it. It's for big time folks. But I see his ad so much and see his post, and it can be tricky. Like just because somebody clicked your Facebook ad yesterday, booked an appointment, it doesn't mean Facebook is necessarily the procuring cause, right? Because they may have found you at a trade show, or it may have been a Twitter ad, right? And then they started following you, and then Instagram, and then they get your newsletter, and then they clicked on Facebook. Oh yeah, okay, it's time. You know, so do you help like figure all that out? Because it's the combination of everything, right? It's the overwhelming proof being everywhere. But I think most people would say, well, it's Facebook, so I'm going to stop Twitter and do more Facebook. But the reality is, it was the Twitter ad that got the ball rolling.
Definitely. And I think that attribution becomes such a complicated thing. Like you said, when people have so many different platforms and when they are trying to be omnipresent, that's great. People see you everywhere. It's like you're following them around the internet, but how do you know which of those things is actually kind of pushing them over? So there's a couple different ways that we kind of look at that. Sometimes it's looking more at the 30,000-foot view of, big streams of where people are coming in. Some CRMs, like you can actually track the original source of how they kind of came into your world. It's not going to be where they originally saw you, but of how they signed up for a lead magnet or they purchased a course or they did something from you. You can kind of go back and look at that original source. But that definitely is one of the biggest struggles, is trying to go through and to figure all that out. And even when you get into Facebook ads, you have different attribution models. So Hyros, it may have a 30-day attribution window. So somebody clicked on a Facebook ad and they didn't do anything. And later on, maybe they were already on your email list and they purchased something from your email list. But to Hyros, that would say it came from Facebook because they clicked on a Facebook ad in the last 30 days. So a lot of it really is kind of looking at overall how your ecosystem is working together to be able to kind of like build that momentum so people are seeing you, because it really is difficult to find the exact journey that every single person took along the way. It becomes really complicated.
Yeah. And you don't need to know everything, but you probably need to know more than what you know. Right? Most folks are probably, we get comfortable, we get in a little zone. All right, I'm making some money. My pipeline's full. I'm hitting quota. I'm going to go golf. Is that what you find?
I think there definitely is a lot of times when we kind of fall into those ruts. I work a lot with people who work in the digital space, and people have sales that are coming in and it's kind of, on repeat, and they just are enjoying those sales coming in. And all of a sudden something stops working. And because they haven't really been looking at anything, they're just kind of looking at all those sales coming in and it feels really great. But they don't really know where to look if something breaks. And so that's often where we come in and start to look, okay, how many people are actually seeing your sales page? How many eyeballs are actually seeing it? How many people are starting checkout? How many people are purchasing? Those kinds of things that honestly, most people don't track. I thought when I first started doing this that, my first couple of clients were unique in the fact that they didn't track too much more beyond their revenue. But it turns out that most people don't track most of those things, which is actually a pretty exciting opportunity, because when you look at how successful these businesses are not tracking anything, and then you think, oh, but if you had those numbers at your fingertips, how much more quickly could you grow if you actually knew some of those things? So there's lots of opportunity there.
Yeah. Do you know who Edward Deming is?
No.
He was an older dude, right? I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s. He was big, I think, at Chrysler. But remember total quality management? Remember that phrase in manufacturing? He came up with it, and it wasn't really accepted. So he was kind of shunned, and he went overseas. He went to Japan and helped kind of when they were rebuilding. People don't realize this. It's like, you say Honda, Toyota, Lexus, Infinity, like, oh, quality, right? That's you just boom, they're just synonymous. But Nissan, when they were rebuilding, in the 60s and 70s, they weren't. They were just little economical, tin cans, and he helped bring processes and bring them back to what get them going to where they are today. But he always said, if you can measure it, you can improve it. And is it our nature as like salespeople or creative types leading a company? We just don't want to do it. That doesn't come natural because we're the creative types, and until it bites us in the butt, we're just like, oh, well.
I think so. And I think it often, when you haven't used them before, I think looking at numbers and data feels constraining to people that are super creative, because I think they see those as like two things kind of in opposition to each other of like, oh, but if I'm looking at numbers, I can't, use my intuition. I can't use my creativity. But I think it's actually really important to use those things in concert with each other. Like it's really important to use them together. And I think that we usually try to start small and like, here's a few numbers for you to look at and to track. And then, how can you utilize that information and kind of build from there? Because if someone hasn't really been digging into their data, giving them 1,000 numbers isn't going to help anything, because that's just as useless as having no numbers, basically.
Right.
They're still not going to use them. So there really is a lot of a process of like building a comfort level there and seeing that there's a lot of confidence that comes in looking at the numbers. And it just helps to like give you that next step and that little bit of direction. And I think that when people step into using them, they start to realize that it actually is kind of great. And a lot of my clients come back afterwards and they're like, I actually am looking forward now to looking at my numbers because I know it's going to help me in places before where I wasn't sure and I didn't have a lot of confidence in the decisions I was making.
So you're not coming at this as like a financial, like an accountant. You're like a digital marketing, what's the word? Like investigator.
Yeah, kind of. Exactly.
Right?
Kind of a data detective of figuring out, where are these people coming from? And even things like, for people that do memberships or subscriptions and things like that, a lot of the software that's used to manage those doesn't really have great numbers to give you specifics about, how many people are in month 3 of their membership, or, it might give you an average churn rate of saying, you have a 4-month typical churn, but are you losing half your people at 2 months and half your people at 6 months? The software will tell you. So we dig into those kinds of things so they have a lot more clarity on, where can they beef up their marketing or their customer support or, depending on the product, whatever it is, to be able to help their people better and retain them longer, increase their customer lifetime value. So it really is those digital people where there's kind of these holes in the software and we're trying to fill that in.
Are you looking at like the sales pipeline, like stages in a CRM, or is it more the digital numbers, Google Analytics and conversions and attribution, things like that?
Yeah, most of the people I work with is the latter, but I definitely do have some where we're kind of looking more at actual pipeline stages and how people are progressing through there. Because again, those numbers are really important for each different member of your team to be able to take a look at. So, if you have, people that aren't showing up to calls and you're just looking at the end result saying, oh, but we are, our new clients are down this month. What's going on? We must not have enough leads. Well, that's actually not the problem. It's the fact that they're not actually showing up for the calls. So you need to fix the right problem. I see a lot of, people just kind of go off gut feeling and they're like, oh, I think this is what we should do. And they jump in. But not only are they not fixing the right thing, they could actually be breaking the thing that's working rather than actually putting their attention in the right spot. Right. So we want to try to help them figure out what those spots are.
Yeah, I've got a client, helped him with kind of peeling the onion. He's a national insurance salesman and 30 years in business. Didn't know his numbers. He makes good money, but like he's like, man, I'm working too hard. I'm getting older. I'm working too hard. And we start peeling things back, and he's a small business, and fortunately, he's got one young guy, technical, that gets it, because I don't get into it like you do, but I was just asking some simple questions on some of the numbers and where do the leads come from? How many, walk me through this? How many are no shows? On and on and on. And like, man, we gotta fix the follow up. Because people fill out forms and he was asking for a lot of information, so we scaled that back. But then he's got software that validates emails, validates phone numbers. And this guy on his team is smart enough to build the if-then logic. Said, okay, well, let's look at, if the email is fake, then tag and route, assign a task to call them.
Right.
If the phone number is fake, then route it. Boom, don't set up time and waste his time calling someone. Oh, it's a bad number. So, well, it only takes 30 seconds. Yes, it takes 30 seconds, but it's also, it chips away at your confidence a little bit.
Yes.
It's like, damn, somebody faked me out. Somebody doesn't trust me enough to give me their real phone number. So we started putting in some logic, and those that give real full information, I'm like, bubble those up to the top. It's just simple things, but I always tell people you can't read the label from inside the bottle. Right? We get in our comfort zones. It's like we need an outsider to come in and go, what the heck is this? Oh, that's not normal.
Totally. And I think that happens in all of our businesses, right? Like it really is hard to look at our own things and say, hey, this is where I can really improve, right? So yeah, there's definitely a lot of, even just little tweaks that can be made. And like you said, I mean, being able to keep momentum, especially for your sales team, is so incredibly important. And for marketing, if you're getting to the point where you're frustrated, or even, if your onboarding systems are terrible and it takes, it's a huge lift to get people onboarded, are you really going to be going into that sales call really excited about getting that person, into your business and being able to support them when you know that as soon as they're stepping into your business, you're like, oh, that's going to be a lot of work and I'm kind of overwhelmed right now. Like, you want to remove as much friction as you can. So we do a lot of automations and try to make sure that that's done as much as possible in the back end so that these numbers show up for people and there isn't a lot of manual stuff that needs to get done, because it just doesn't get done if that's what we're relying on, because they just don't have the time or the inclination or whatever. Whereas if it can show up in a dashboard, they're much more likely to actually look at it and use it.
Yeah. So do they need you like ongoing, or do you come in, kind of fix things 3 months, 6 months, and then it's kind of a maintenance? How do you, it would seem like there's a whole lot of work for you in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a little bit to keep it going, kind of keep them accountable. Is that kind of the approach?
Yeah. And there's definitely changes that need to be made, especially, like I said, because I work with a lot of online sellers. So they usually are changing things a lot. Their marketing strategies change, they're pivoting, they're starting new courses or whatever the case may be. So that's often things that the parts that need to be incorporated to make sure that those things are being tracked properly. Because, I don't think I've worked with any businesses that have remained kind of static in their offering for 6 months or a year or things like that. Like, there's always those shifts that are being made. So a lot of the support comes in there. And then also helping them to look at the numbers and say, now that you know these numbers, what can you actually do with them? Because if you're just looking at them and being, oh, that's great, look at that % conversion, that's wonderful, and then walking away and not doing anything with it, that doesn't really help you either, right? So being able to take the operational and marketing experience that I have and be able to help them figure out then, okay, well, what's the next step and how do you apply that? And how do we make tweaks and then go back and look at the numbers again, see what happened, and then make more tweaks as we go. There's always those adjustments that need to be made.
So you are helping them with the marketing as well, like beyond just the technical, looking at the numbers?
More so with identifying where bottlenecks are and then giving suggestions of what needs to change or what things need to be looked at, right? So again, one thing that comes out through like, oh, I don't have enough sales. I need to change my offer. I need to change my pricing, that kind of thing. We go back to simple things like, how many people are actually seeing your sales page? Literally, how many eyeballs have been on your page? Okay, have there been enough to actually make decisions? And if so, okay, well, then maybe we need to start looking at how deep are people getting into your sales page? We can use different tools to be able to see how they're actually interacting with the page. Is there something about it that's confusing? Do you need to look at the messaging? That type of thing. So I don't do the marketing work for them, but I can help kind of point them in the right direction of things that they need to be able to look at to help increase those conversion rates.
Nice. Is there a certain size company, that's ideal? Somebody, if they're too small or too big?
I'm typically working with a lot of businesses that are kind of in like kind of close to 7-figure range to like low 7 figures. That's usually where they're kind of at that point where, they've kind of grown through the ability of the owner. They're either great at a craft or they've created a course that has really taken off or something like that. And they usually at that point get to a place where those numbers are really what's going to help them hit kind of that next level of growth that they're looking for. Or, if let's say they have a membership or subscription, they're getting a lot of churn and they don't know why, but they also kind of don't really know how much. Just that clarity, that's usually the spot where they're really hitting into there and really starting to wonder, what in the world is going on in the back end. Those are the people that I'm typically working with now.
Are they embarrassed? Like how do you get them over that? Because I know deep down, maybe not even deep down, they're like, man, I'm making money, but I know I'm wasting money. I don't really, like I need somebody, but I don't want anybody to look. I mean, do you get that?
Definitely. And I think kind of across operations as well. I'm a certified director of operations. I started working kind of overall in operations and then kind of honed into doing numbers when I saw this kind of hole that was needed to be filled. And I think that in general, there's a lot of that from business owners of like, ooh, I don't want to have people to see how I've actually been running things in the back end because they're going to see it's messy or that, I haven't been keeping up with XYZ, whatever. But I think that there's so much of that. Everybody's business has places where things aren't ideal, right? We're never going to start a business and all of a sudden tomorrow everything is firing on all cylinders. So there tends to be some hesitation, maybe some sheepishness as people are kind of talking about some of the things. But that really is something that I try to work through with the people that I'm working with. We want to make it a very safe and open place to be like, if you have a question, ask the question, because I'm sure,
right,
everybody sitting on the call probably has the question too. And to be able to start from that beginning stage and kind of work up in knowledge level and application and all of those things, I want them to be able to actually use the tool that we give them afterwards and know what to do with it. So that education piece and that comfort level is really important for me to build up. And I mean, I have areas that I don't love. Like I'm not a great copywriter at all. Like I don't like writing copy. It is not my jam. I watch other people do it and I think this is amazing that their brains work like that because mine doesn't. And so I try to come at it from that perspective. Like if somebody was teaching me copywriting, how uncomfortable would I feel and what would I need to feel supported through that, and try to approach it that same way with people with numbers that, kind of aren't fans of them.
Well, but are you really trying to teach them, or are you just trying to help them get the tools so it's just more obvious? You know what I mean? Because like a lot of people, you need to know everything, right? But we can't know everything.
Right.
And so, are you creating tools? Because like if you try to show me, it's like, because that's me, right? I don't want, it's like I have CPAs for a reason.
Right.
I've got techie folks like Google Tag Manager, all retargeting pixels. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, no, don't make me.
Yeah.
So can you just make it simple?
Definitely. And that's the goal, right? Is that the whole, like how the sausage is made, they don't want to know any of that. They don't want to know how we're setting the tech up in the background, anything like that. They just want to know the end result where they're like, here's the 3 numbers we need to know. Excellent. Let's get you those 3 numbers and then say, now that you have this number, what decision can you make from it? That's definitely the goal, is to simplify it, make it super clear, take away all that extra stuff that they're just going to be like, oh, I want nothing to do with that. That doesn't even need to be on the radar. That's why we handle all of the like tech stuff in the background as well, so they don't have to.
Do you ever get pushback or even sabotage because you're kind of sitting, got the Venn diagram, operations, marketing, tech. Mm-hmm. Some of them, I got to imagine, might feel threatened with you coming in.
I think actually most people are usually kind of relieved by the time that we get to the point where we're coming in there, because they're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do the setup and all of those things. I don't have time to do this. So usually by the time that we have a conversation and, and can kind of connect and they see what's possible, they think, oh my goodness, that would be amazing to be able to have, that information available. Let's do that, because they don't have to do the heavy lifting of it. They can have someone else come in and do it for them. So I think it's usually more relief at that point.
Well, it should be, but do some think, does the boss ever say, I got a marketing person, why don't they know this? I got my tech guy. How come he doesn't know these metrics? That's a CRM thing. And they always give the CRM to the tech guy. It's like, why does the tech guy have the CRM? Like, no, take that away from the tech guy. But it is what it is. You ever run across that?
I think for the most part, most of the people I've worked with have been pretty great about, being open with it and kind of, getting the support that they need. Occasionally it becomes a little challenging if there's 2 different kind of stakeholders that want numbers and they want to be able to see them in a different way, or they don't see the importance of one, but the other person's like, no, this is the one we need. And the other person's like, no, we don't need it at all. So part of it is kind of talking through that and saying, okay, well, what were you going to use these numbers for? Are we tracking these just for fun? Are these vanity metrics that don't really make a difference? If you know this number, are you really not going to use it to make a decision? Well, then you probably don't need to track it, right? And helping kind of streamline that process of like, what are you actually going to use the information for, and making sure that's the information that they have. So that's usually the trickiest part, is kind of navigating all of that input and making sure they end up with something that's really going to make a difference.
Yeah, because hiding from something, ignoring it never makes it better.
It really doesn't. And I think that's, we all, like I said, in different areas of our business, we all have those things that we do, right? Kind of shedding light on it and making it available to actually be able to look at it. That's how we grow and we change. So a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, are pretty good about having a growth mindset and about looking at, hey, maybe I'm not the best at this, but it's a place where I can grow, or I just need somebody to take this over for me because it's not an area that I really want to lean into. And I definitely appreciate both perspectives of that, and just, really want to be able to just help out as much as needed, just so that they can really have the growth that they're after. I really like to work with people that have a very specific mission with their business. They're trying to have impact in some way. And it helps, I think, to kind of get over some of those hard feelings around all of this when they're like, but if I can grow, I have more of an impact. I can serve more of the people. I can help change more lives. I can help, more people step into business freedom or financial freedom or more time with their families or whatever the thing is that kind of drives them. It helps them to see that they can deal with their discomfort and numbers a little bit more. They can impact more people. That really helps to be able to have that implementation go a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah. Is there any third-party tool or something simple like you recommend to everybody? That you can't get to everybody, and people listening, is there something they should try or be looking at, or is there like a standard report, they could maybe go bookmark from Facebook or Google or a CRM?
I think one of the main things is making sure that there's tracking set up on the website in general. Like so many people aren't, they don't have their Google Analytics set up, so no historical data is going in there. Having that set up, so at least it's collecting that data, so you can go back and look at it when you're ready. It's such an important part of that. People think, oh, I don't need it now, I'm not going to look at it. But then by the time that you actually set it up, it can't pull the data retroactively, and you're starting basically
Right.
from scratch, and you have nothing to look at. So I think that's a big one. Another one that people can do more of too is really digging into the numbers of like their actual sales. So if they're selling digital products or an e-commerce store, how much revenue you are bringing in, but how much, like which product is actually driving the revenue. Most people, when they think about it in their head, they're like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's this. And when you ask for actual numbers, you usually see a pretty different story than what we think is happening. So I think the numbers just kind of help to ground us a little bit and actually give us the truth of what's happening rather than what we feel like is happening. So I think those ones are always kind of, the sales numbers especially, are always kind of a big aha when people see it laid out and like, how is it changing month over month and how is it changing year over year? And we don't often look at it in that way, especially for, we have accountants and they're giving us P&Ls and things like that. That's amazing. But sometimes we don't have the information to kind of step back and be like, oh, look, we have a dip in July every year. We have some seasonality in our business we need to deal with, either marketing wise or just prepare throughout the year for the fact we're going to have that dip. So having that kind of context really helps to make a lot of really good decisions.
Yeah, I see that all the time. People are like, well, yeah, we're slow in the summer. Or we're slow around New Year. We're slow. I'm like, then plan for it.
Yes.
And make a different offer. I had a guy on years and years ago, Brian Madden, and they were the Mulch Brothers, and up in Ohio. And well, guess what? You don't need much mulch when there's 2 feet of snow on your yard, right? So they added firewood, right? It's like they had a thriving business. It's like, well, we know we're going to be slow in the winter, so boom, and so all right, if you're mowing, in the summer, then maybe you're snow blowing in the winter. But I mean, for people to just accept it, like all the time I talk to people and it just boggles my mind, and they don't realize as well, like how far ahead you got to be doing things. It's like, we see these Christmas commercials, right? And they always start, man, they start like, I don't know, August now, but it's crazy. But whenever they start, like they're probably making these commercials, in September and in August.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, it cracks me up to think about like being an actor. It's August, hot, like let's go into a studio and put on Christmas sweaters because they're getting everything ready, because that's going to start airing probably in November. I mean, everything's advertised so early now. But people, they just don't think ahead, do they?
No. And I mean, I think in our lives in general, we tend to be very reactive, right? In a lot of different areas. And the more that we can be proactive in a lot of different areas in our business, the calmer things are in general. I mean, I see a lot of people that are like, oh, let's do a launch in 2 weeks. And their team kind of panic and think, that would be great to be able to do a launch in 2 weeks. But we have all of this laundry list of things that would need to get done. And capacity wise, that's just not really possible. So sometimes there's a bit of a push and pull there between kind of usually a visionary leader who has the ideas and like, I love their ideas. I love visionaries. I love the way their brains work. But I mean, I'm the operator, right? So I hear the idea and then I'm like, okay, well now how does this translate down into what actually needs to get done? And it's usually a lot more complex and time consuming than what is anticipated in the first place. So there's always a bit of tension there. And I think that great businesses are able to find a good balance between those things. And the visionary can keep having ideas, but might need to be okay with not quite turning on a dime all the time and giving a little bit more space to their team to figure those things out and letting the people on their team who love to plan be more proactive and to, like you said, to be able to plan those Christmas commercials 5-6 months in advance to make sure it's all done, rather than realizing it, a week before Black Friday, oh, we should probably put something together for next week, right? But it takes a lot of foresight and the willingness to sit down and to think ahead rather than just trying to do everything on the fly.
Yeah. Amen. So your website's KariPoppleton.com, right? So Kari. And then I've got a link in here. You've made a little giveaway for KariPoppleton.com/sales-podcast. So what are you offering here? What's this? 5 questions your data can answer for you?
I think sometimes we don't know all of the questions that can be answered. And sometimes I'll come in and start working with somebody because they want a particular question answered, and we do that one, and then they realize, oh, hey, we could actually know this as well. So the guide tries to give a little bit more perspective on the types of things that you actually can know, especially when it comes to your marketing. It's nice to know that you're not just kind of throwing things out there randomly and hoping something sticks, but that you can actually have more information about what actually is working. So you can put your time and your effort and your team's effort into something that's actually working rather than just kind of hoping for the best. The guide kind of helps to show some examples.
And so you were saying, so November through March, it's just so you can get out of the frozen tundra, you'll fly south, and it's a totally free visit.
That would be amazing, because I gotta tell you,
it's totally free for us to go to you from November to March.
Everyone can come here and experience the frozen tundra that is Winnipeg. It's definitely very attractive to be going somewhere warmer when it's this cold outside.
All right, I'll come visit. Like I said, I made it to Maine, but it was in the summer, and I want to get back in the winter. My buddy lives on a lake up there, and he was telling me, they pull everything in, pull the boats off, pull their docks off because it freezes, and I need to go ice fishing. I need to go do donuts in the ice with some 4x4s. I'm sure you've probably done all that, huh?
It's a very different experience getting to come and experience like the cold winter here, like it really is different. I've been in other places where winter was kind of more mild, and yes, there's snow and things like that. But, we have the lovely thing here, even though it's cold, the sky is like blue and the snow sparkles everywhere. And there's just something about that. And the way that your feet crunch on like really frozen snow, you have to experience it to be able to really appreciate it.
I spent a year in Korea. I mean, I was young and I was in the Air Force, and, it got pretty cold. We got cold fronts coming in from Siberia. I mean, it got cold, and it was that dry, crunchy ice. But a lot of times it was wet, too, coming off the Yellow Sea. And so it was a little more humid. They call it the land of the morning calm because it was very moist, and then it would get foggy.
Interesting.
But it got cold. But do you get the northern lights up there?
Occasionally you can see that if you kind of go outside the city. Obviously, if you go further north, you can get a much better view of it. So I've only seen a few bits of it here and there at 2:00 in the morning. And actually in the city, I've seen a little, not the amazing pictures that you see when you Google it, but just kind of like little flashes of it. I would love to go up north and really be able to take that in, because it is just incredible.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to see that one day. That's the plan.
Yeah, put it on the bucket list.
It's on the bucket list. It's there. Cool. All right. Well, Kari Poppleton, thanks for coming on. It's been great. Thanks for educating us on the numbers.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. You too.